Erev Tov, everyone. So we've gotten through Purim, then we can start talking about Pesach. It's 30 Yom Lifnei HaChag, Sholim V'Dorshim Berachot HaChag. That's the truth is there are at least 3 distinct areas in Halacha where the idea, once we get to 30 days before Chag HaPesach, where this has a practical ramification for us. Obviously, one of them is 30 Yom Lifnei HaChag, Sholim V'Dorshim, says the Gemara, says the Shulchan Aruch. See in a moment that one has to begin studying the halachot of the Chag. It has a few other nafkaminot as well. You could compare it to the idea, something that we have a similar idea by Ilchot Shabbat. When it comes to Ilchot Shabbat, those in the Tzor Bashir will know, we did this, I think the first year we had on Ilchot Shabbat, that when you get to Yom Revi'i, you get to Wednesday, already it has to be in one's consciousness. One has to be aware of the fact that Shabbat is coming up. So the Gemara says that if one is going on a sfina, and is going on a boat already 3 days before Shabbat, one has to be aware one would not be allowed to under certain conditions. There's a big discussion, many different We're back, I think. Okay. So he says, Shoalin v'doshin berachot HaChag. The truth is, there's a couple of questions that this raises. There are a number of different girsaot we see between the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch. Sometimes it says, Shoalin berachot HaPesach, or it says, Shoalin v'doshin berachot HaPesach. Is there a difference whether we add in that word doshin? We'll see in a moment. But a couple of questions that this halacha raises. First of all, who is it talking about? Who is required? Who is obligated to be Shoalin v'doshin berachot HaPesach? Is this everybody? Is this just in the Beit Midrash? Is this just for the Rabbanim? Okay, that's one question. Another question that comes up, interestingly, is this a unique halacha to Pesach? Or is this a halacha for Yom Tov, 30 days before the Chag, before any Chag? Or maybe just Pesach? And there's reasons why it may be different, why it may be the same. So the Gemara actually says, first of all, there are 2 opinions in the Gemara. One says you have to begin 30 days before. One says you have to begin 2 weeks before. Okay, it's learned out from the Psukim. It's learned out. We get to 30 days because it says Moshe Rabbeinu stood on Pesach Rishon and he told them about the halachot of Pesach Sheni. And from there, so the Pshat in the Gemara, and the Tosfot points this out as well, is that this idea of 30 days before, preparing for 30 days, was primarily related to the Korban. And the truth is, there's many halachot we have, particularly regarding Pesach, which are related to the Korban Pesach. Obviously, in our days, we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, we don't have Korbanot. But that was the primary reason for the idea of 30 days before preparation. Tosfot Avodah Zarah says, even though nowadays we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, we don't have Korbanot, nonetheless, we still have this requirement of 30 days before Shoalim v'dorshim berachot HaChag. There are many halachot which do remain relevant, and we need to be prepared. So the Shulchan Aruch says, this is in Chelek Hey in Mishnah Berurah. This is the first siman in Hilchot Pesach. The first siman in Hilchot Pesach is that you have to learn Hilchot Pesach. Right? He says, Shoalin berachot Pesach kodem lePesach 30 yom. That 30 days before Pesach, and Poskim point out bit of disagreement about this, but the Poskim point out when is 30 days before Pesach is on Purim. As you say, at the Purim Surah, that's already where you start learning the halachot of Pesach. Right? Good luck with that. But Shoalim halachot of Pesach kodem 30 yom. The Rama mentions here, by the way, the minhag of Ma'ot Chitin, of giving for tzedakah before Pesach. But as I said, so over here it just says Shoalim. So the Biur Halacha points out that in the Torah it says Shoalim v'dorshin. mention the question, who is the one here who is studying? What's the difference between if we say Shoalin or Shoalin v'Dolshin? Shoalin v'Dolshin sounds more like everybody has to Dolshin, study, be engaged in the laws of Pesach, whereas Shoalin just means to ask the question. So the Ran here has a very interesting shita. He says, it's not that everybody is obligated 30 days before to be engaged in Hilchot Pesach. Obviously, it's a good idea. Obviously, it's the more prepared you can be, the better. But he says that this is enough kamina for if two Talmidim come with a question, two people come with a shaila to the Rav, which one does he have to answer first? One says a Shoel Binyan. He says that if you can, that from the time that we get to, if one person comes with a very pressing shaila that's relevant now, that's relevant to what's going on, and another one comes with something which is theoretical, which is something that can wait. Obviously, that which is now, which is relevant, which is in the sugya that we're in, that takes precedence. So he says from 30 days before, it's now considered within 30 days before Pesach, somebody comes with a shaila in Hilchot Pesach, that is considered Shoel Kenyan. That is considered now is the time, and that's what one has to be, that takes precedence, must be answered first. So he says, that's what it means when I say Shoalin B'Chot Pesach. You come and ask the shaila that you ask in Hilchot Pesach, that comes first, that has to be answered first, that's already now within 30 days. So based on that, if we accept that would mean that for everybody else, you don't necessarily have to be engaged in learning these halachot. There is a discussion here in the Rishonim. Does it mean when you say Sholim ve'Chot Pesach that just in the Beit Midrash, in the study programs, etc., that's the shiurim should be on that, or does every individual have to pick aside times for themselves to study? Bottom line is, hard to say that there is obviously if somebody has daf yomi or whatever, so you should carry on. Don't cancel your daf yomi in order to learn Hilchot Pesach. You should add on to it. But we're not going to say there is a bona fide obligation for every individual to now be learning Hilchot Pesach, but it's a good thing to do, and as I say, obviously the more the better. So the Mishnah Berurah says, he says Shoalim B'Chot Pesach. He says Shalei Moshe Omed BePesach Lishon. That's how the Gemara learns out, where we get the 30 days from. Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching them on Pesach Rishon about Pesach Sheni. Now, he says, Hu adin b'shar yamim tovim nami dorshim kodem lachen 30 yom be'elchotehem. Says the Mishnah Berurah first. This halacha is not unique to Pesach. This would apply to every chag. Every chag you would have to study the laws for 30 days before. Havayen biur agla shedato debatzeret sagi miyom aleph b'sivan. Okay, the Vilna Gaon says when it comes to Shavuot, it's enough from Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Not that many unique laws to Shavuot. A few days is enough. And then he says, V'yesh omrim, for those who say no, Da'chiyuv 30 yom urak b'Pesach. So there are many opinions that say this idea of 30 days before, unique to Pesach. Why? Mishum de'yesh ben halachot rabot. You may have noticed that Pesach has many halachot. כגון תחינת חיטים, ואפיית המצות, ועגלת כלים, וביור חמץ. Nowadays, a lot of it's done for us. Most people are not so concerned with the laws of grinding wheat and baking matzot. You go to the shop and you buy the box of matzos that has the hechsher on, and then that's done for you. But nonetheless, so you have in terms of baking matzot, in terms of hagalat kelim, kashering your kitchen, kashering all your kelim, biur chametz, getting rid of chametz. Now, it's not just that we have a lot of halachot when it comes to Pesach, but there's something unique about these halachot, which you don't have by other chagim necessarily, which is if you don't do them in time, if you don't do them in advance, you can't fix it. Once Pesach comes, it's too late. But here by Pesach, we have to start early, because if we don't get it right, we don't kasher our kelim, if we don't get rid of our chametz before Pesach, comes Pesach, it's going to be too late. The Beit Yosef says, if you contrast even Sukkot, for example, Sukkot has many halachot. You have Abaminim, you have building Sukkah, some complex halachot comes to Sukkah. But he says with Sukkah, you don't need to be so worried, because at the end of the day, okay, if you have 2 and a bit walls, it's enough. And you have a din of levud, and you have all sorts of things. And even with the lulav and the Abaminim, there's certain stringencies on the first day, but sort of afterwards, it's okay. So basically, you can Sukkot, even if you aren't as prepared, you can get by. But when it comes to Pesach, if you're not going to do it before, then you have a problem. I was discussing with somebody this morning. Another common question that comes up: if people go away for Pesach, let's say somebody goes and stays in Airbnb or whatever it is, a self-catered apartment. So if you go before Pesach, you go before and you kasher the place. What happens if somebody goes and is staying somewhere for Chol HaMoed, and they want to come and they want to kasher on Chol HaMoed? That's much, much more complicated. A lot of things which you cannot do. We'll talk a little bit about Kelim, Hagala, Nibun, etc. But there are a lot of the principles and the applications of why certain things can be kasher and how they can be kasher that would apply before Pesach. But if you try to do it on Pesach, it's not necessarily going to work, particularly for the Ashkenazim. So that's what he's pointing out here. On Pesach, we have many, many different halachot, and the halachot which have to be fulfilled before Pesach, later, otherwise it's going to be too late. And therefore, that is why, particularly 30 days before the Chag, one needs to know these halachot. He says, right, late lu takana b'Pesach. מה שאין כן בשעה יום טוב די באיזה ימים קודם, גם זה עד ימים טובים. Okay, so you start learning the halachot a few days before, you'll probably be okay. says, על כל פנים, ביום טוב גופה, לכל העלמא צריך לשאול ולדרוש בכל יום טוב בהלכותיה כדית בסוף מגילה. Another point is that on every Yom Tov, and this is explicit in the Gemara at the end of Megillah, so we've been discussing now the idea of learning the halachot 30 days before. There is a separate takana of Moshe Rabbeinu, that on the day of Yom Tov itself, then one also needs to be engaged in the halachot, in the laws of that Yom Tov. It says, the Gemara says, Moshe tiken em Yisrael, Yoshoalin v'dorshin benyano shel yom, Hilchot Pesach b'Pesach, Hilchot Atzeret b'Atzeret, Hilchot Chag b'Chag. That has to be on the day of Yom Tov itself as well. There's a special takana, the part of the Limud Torah that needs to be on the Chag is related to the Chag itself. There are those who say that the way we fulfill this is with Kriyat Torah, but of the Chag, but others say as well that that's a separate takana. Okay, so that is 30 days before the Chag, we begin learning. Tomorrow we'll discuss, as I mentioned, what happens within 30 days before the Chag, which we are within those 30 days now. If one leaves their home, one is not, obviously if one's planning to come back on Chol HaMoed or during Pesach, so one needs to have Biur Chametz. But even if one is not planning to come back, what does one have to do? What are the requirements of Bdikat Chametz? That for tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer, Sakar Shbaruch Hu lezakot Yisrael, lefichach ba'al mitzvot, shneimad anachem b'tzman tzidko, yagdir Torah v'yad.